Okay. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Milwaukee Area Woodturner's October demonstration, meeting demonstration, and I'm Ron Brooks, president. Tonight we have Jerry handling the computers, and we have two member demonstrators this evening. We have Curtis Van Weelden, and we also have Tom Hipsak. So that should be rather interesting. Tom will be talking about pens and turning specifically things to put the real pens in general. And then Kristen's talking about laser engraving. That should be interesting. So I'll start by meeting typically with the treasurer's report, thanks to Carl. And we had an opening balance of $8,414. We had expenses of about $104. We had some receivables of about $171, and it leaves us with a balance of $8,481. That sounds better. We also have two new members that have joined the past month or so. We have Ray White from West Dallas and Bob Lewis from Milwaukee. And if you're joining us this evening, welcome and thank you for joining the call. And very quickly, we are still looking for volunteer members we still have the president's position open. We have one, possibly two board member positions open, program coordinator, which is the demonstration coordinator, and a website manager. All those positions are open. So if you're interested, either email me or email Tony. And as I mentioned, this is a web meeting, a Zoom meeting, what we call an interactive remote demonstration, because you do have the ability to talk to us, just press the space bar on most computers, and Jerry will let you in and you will ask questions. The board and the public general, but the board members have decided that we'll continue with Zoom meetings until the end of the year. So next month in October, we have Trent Bosch, who's going to be doing a demonstration for us, which is wonderful, great national demonstration. And we're still working on the December meeting, and to let everyone know that the board has decided that we're going to probably wind up spending some money to get some updated or upgraded equipment so we can handle both Zoom meetings and limited in-person meetings. And that may start after the first of the year. The new equipment may start hopefully sooner than that. And I just want to let everyone get up to speed on it. So tonight, as I mentioned, we got two members. We're going to start with Tom. And Tom's going to be up there and talking about 10 and 10:30. Thank you very much.
Good evening, club members. I've been turning a lot of pens for troops the last few years, and I've tried to come up with ways that would make my turning faster. So what I've done, well, the first thing I do is I have a lot of scrap wood that I can't make anything else out of, so I'll cut it into these kind of squares here. And I've made this jig here that's dedicated just to cut the lengths I need for the slimline pen. And what I'll do, one of the first things I'll do is I'll mark with a number, letter, or some identification so that I can keep all my pairs oriented correctly. When I cut these, I'll cut about maybe 30, 40 pairs of blanks at a time. So they're scattered all over my bandsaw table, on the floor, or whatever. With the numbers, I'm very easy to pick them up, match them up, and rubber band them together. So once I have all of my, let's see here. I got a cheat sheet here. I don't want to miss anything. After I have them all cut, I like to use a 7mm brad point bit. I've purchased some of the other bits that they have upstairs, and nothing cuts better than a brad point bit for me. So that's what I use. And after that, I band them together, and then I get my tube ready. For tubes, they should probably be sanded And I like to sand my tubes on my pin mandrel. So if I can put up to 3 tubes on a mandrel, I like these live centers rather than the knurled brass nut. Put them up here. And by the way, I'm not going to really be doing any turning or actually using of the lathe. Curtis has a lot of sensitive equipment set up here for the next demo. We're not going to want to get any dust or chips on that. But with a 120 grit or 150 grit while the lathe is turning, you can sand these tubes very, very fast. Most of this stuff you probably already do, but I'm just going over that. The next thing I like to do, because I worked with automotive paints for many years, I am sensitized to CA glue. So my glue of choice is polyurethane. And when you're using polyurethane, you're probably definitely going to want to suit up, because this stuff will stain your hand. So much for these. Well, I'll just put one on. I like to apply the glue to the insides of my blanks using a 3/16 dowel. Dave Brickhammer maybe has a better method, because what Dave Brickhammer does is he dips his blanks in water, and then he puts the glue on a flat surface, rolls his barrels on it, and just shoves them in. Because the water's there, the curing time of the glue is very fast. I did soapbox derby for many years, and I like the long open time of polyurethane glue, so I don't use water. I just coat the insides, and once it's coated on the inside, I take my tube and insert it. Normally there will be some glue that pushes out, and what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll just scrape away that little glue that might have squeezed inside the tube. Then I set them aside for drying. If you're unsure whether or not there's going to be enough glue, even after you've coated the inside, you can also apply a little bit of glue to the outside surface of the brass tube before you insert it. Now, if you're gluing up, zoom in on this real close. If you're gluing up things like plastics and stuff, sometimes the foaming of CA glue, or not CA, polyurethane glue will force your tubes out of the holes. And so monitor your blanks from time to time to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because once that's hardened, it's no good anymore. The next thing you're going to want to do I don't see it here. I didn't bring my barrel trimmer, but the next thing you're going to want to do is face off your blanks after they've cured. And on occasion, when you go to put on a trim blank onto your, a blank onto your mandrel, and all of a sudden it just doesn't want to go any further, look inside your tube. There might be a little glue inside there. And I just get in there with a little tiny pick and clean it out. those of you that have the high-speed steel trimmers, sometimes they get dull. I found that these router bit hones are really nice to sharpen them up. Just go ahead there, just like you would a router bit, and sharpen your cutters, your end mill cutters. And they're good to go again. Okay. Of course, everybody does this. You mount your blanks on there, and you probably are going to orientate your blanks such that the number is to the center on both blanks. Bring up your tailstock and go ahead and turn. I prefer to turn with my skew. And with my skew, I can get very, very, very close to these bushings before I do any sanding. Usually I'll sand at the most with a 180 down to just a little bit to take any irregularities out. And then I will go switch to 220, 320, and then eventually 400 to finish it up. My last sanding is done with the grain. Now I've got a set of partially turned pen blanks that I'm going to assemble right now. And we're going to make believe that I have turned and sanded these already. My finish of choice on my pen blanks is polyurethane. And what I do is I take polyurethane from the can and put it into these little 4-ounce Boston bottles. That way I can easily apply it. I apply my finish to the blanks while the lathe is running at a slow speed of around 300 RPM, and just get it in there. Now the problem with polyurethane glue is that you'll probably have to use multiple applications, and I really don't want this to sit on my lathe for 3-4 hours or however long I want it to allow it to dry. So I want to get these off the lathe. And what I've come up with is a 3/16 inch dowel. What I'll do is I'll take my first bushing off, and then I'll slide it on. Take the next one, slide it on. I now have these on a dowel, and I still have my orientation. So I want to set these aside, and I was running out of room and a place to set these aside, so I came up with a stick that I drilled a bunch of holes into. What I'll do, Ron, if you can zoom down, I just stick them in there and rest them on my other lathe. They'll sit there for however long I want them. I've got 2 of these blocks, so I can make up 40 blanks if I want to. And then when they're dry enough for another coat of finish, I go ahead, take them off, slide my bushing on there, and I can slide them right on. Put a second bushing. I don't worry about the middle one. Apply sand or apply more finish as needed. Take them off. Set them aside again till maybe I'm going to put a 3rd or 4th coat of polyurethane on again till I get that beautiful built up shine. That shine should look something like this when I'm done, or close to it.
Once again, depending where you're at and what kind of shine you want, you may have to put on 3, 4, 5 applications of the wipe on poly. And once again, that's the reason I use wipe on poly, is because, once again, even though CA glue is a better finish and even faster, I got to stay away from it. And so I use polyurethane. It's the next most durable finish for me. Need Z more announced before Kurt? Okay. Zoom. Okay. After I have finished my last application of polyurethane, the next and final step I have for my pens is to buff them. And when I first started buffing them, buffing one of these little blanks, and I'll use just this brass tube for now, was difficult to hold. Plus you're flipping it and doing all kinds of stuff. And okay, I'm losing my orientation now. Sometimes I would forget. So what I did was I came up with another way. This is actually a blank for a bolt action pen. What I'll do is I'll take this off. These now are still on here. They're still oriented. I glued a piece of brass tubing on the end of this shaft for a pen mandrel. Now I can go ahead and slide them right onto here. Take a brass tube to fill in some of the spacing. Tighten up the nut. Now I have a lot of surface area that I can actually hold on to while I'm buffing these. It's less likely that my buffer is going to catch, and if it does, I've got enough grip that it's not going to throw my blanks clear across the room. So this has been very useful. Now that I've used it, I'm going to redesign it again. I'm going to make this brass end a little longer, take a little off of here, and that way they'll be more centered. But yeah, these are very, very useful for holding your blanks when you're buffing. To assemble the blanks, I like to use these Morris taper inserts in my lathe. I find that I have far more control assembling a pen with these than I actually do with the standard pen that has a lever. You can very, very easily assemble a pen with these, and you don't have to run someplace else where you've got that pen press set up. I'm going to go ahead and take this one, and this one's been finished, so I'm going to go ahead and assemble the pen. I'll do this, I'll just lay it on here like this, and get the parts out. I'll take this end, bring this up here, and very, very easily assemble it. While it's this close, I'll go ahead and I'll assemble the other side of the pen. Now this time, this was where the two came together, so this time I wanted to use this other end where I've got the tape on it. So I will go ahead And you also probably, depending on how pronounced your grain is, orientate where you want this clip to be. The last step is to insert the transmission. And I learned very soon that if you don't have your blanks the full length, that if you push this in all the way to this indexing line, your pen is going to probably not retract back into the, or your filler is not going to retract back into the pen. So what I do is I very easily just crank it up there. Okay, I'm about 1/16 of an inch from that line. I'll take my filler, insert it, take a look at it. It's just barely through there. So another 1/16 inch up to that line will probably bring it where it is. What I like about this press is that I can very easily control exactly within thousandths of an inch almost where that is going to be. On your lever presses, you got to apply so much pressure, and then it breaks the friction, and you probably went too far. So with this, you can very easily control how far you press that transmission in, and you have a completed pen. Now, as you noticed earlier, I used a little piece of paper towel folded up for my finish. And I'm going to show you how I cut them after I clean this all off here. This is a cutting mat that we used in engineering to do cut and paste drawings. I've had it for many, many years, and I found it very useful for cutting paper. When I did jewelry boxes, it was also very useful for cutting the felt linings and drawers, but it's also very useful for cutting paper towel. I'll stack about 5 of these together. This is not necessarily square. It's 11.5 inches this way and 11 inches this way. So let's see, excuse me. No, 10.5 and 11. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 5.5 inches here. I love these little pizza cutters. You get them from your wife's sewing cabinet if you're brave enough, or you go buy your own. How easy is that to cut? Very accurately. 5 1/4. Stack them up. There. I have my little, and I usually don't worry about how I slice these in half. I have these little pads for now applying my finish. Here's another little quick tip. I have pencils on all my equipment all over, and I've taken and applied a 1/4 inch rare earth magnet to it with a piece of heat shrink tubing. And right over here, there's my pencil. I got them all over. When you make pens for troops, it's nice if you fill out one of these gift cards. And when I first started doing them, they would cut these up for you, and you would have to fill them in with a pen. To me, that was just way too much work. So I asked Chris for a copy of the file, which was a PDF file. I took the graphics off of it and made a Word document. And now I can fill in all of this information very easily on my computer, print it, and when it comes time to cut these, back to my little mat here. Line it up with the line. I'll probably go ahead and trim the outsides first. A lot faster than a scissors, and you get a nice straight line. Well, that's as far as I'm going to go. You get the idea. You can make as many files as you want of this. I will share it with anybody that's viewing and would like to have this file. Just contact me. I'll email you the file. All you got to do is put in your own information, print it. Okay, that's about all I have. Basically, all I wanted to do was share these tips with you on how, or some of the things that I do to make turning for the troops easier and faster. And Ron would like to say a few more words. Oh, I got one more thing. Forgive me. Sandpaper. If you haven't bought one of these are great. You get them at Rockler. Very easy to go ahead, take your sandpaper, put it in here. You can also make your own with a razor, with a hacksaw blade. And you can just go ahead and really very easily size your paper, as I do for hand sanding, and fold it into thirds, and you're ready to go. I actually have a little box with a lot of this sandpaper already pre-cut, and I just go to my box and I just grab a sheet when I need it. I don't think I missed anything else. It was just I wanted to present these tips to you, so if you are going to be doing pens for the troops, and I encourage you to do so, to make it easier and faster to crank them out, you can make 20 pens very easily with some of this, the methods I just shown here. So, okay.
Before I introduce Kurt, there were a couple of quick announcements I forgot to mention in the beginning of our of the meeting here this evening. First, the club is very much involved with Turn for Troops. Dave Drickhammer and Carl Brust help run that, and please continue turning them in. At the base of the steps is a little mailbox. As a matter of fact, Dave or Carl, if you're listening, there's another 2 or 3 packs sitting in there. We have, and Dave just told me this just today, 941 pins. That's really good. We're going to hit 1,000. That's great. Something else that the club is involved in is empty bowls. Now, it's been kind of wishy-washy as to when that was going to occur, if it was going to occur. And I just found out literally just about 2 or 3 days ago that, yes, they're going to do it. We have next to no bowls. And I know there's a lot of wood out there, and probably people have turned bowls. But, Ryan, if you want to zoom a little bit out here. I made boxes like this, like that, and they're going to be sitting at the base of the steps to the meeting room. There's going to be a couple of boxes down there, and I need these to be. I need the empty bowls turned in the next 2 weeks or so, because I got to deliver them before the beginning of October. So I want to put those 2 announcements out there. Next, we're going to have Kurt, and Kurt's going to talk about laser engraving.
Hi, my name is Curtis Van Weelden. Been with the club for maybe 6 years or so. And tonight I'm going to talk about laser engraving. So, why would you want to buy a laser? I think it looks more professional than signing your name. I hated putting my scrawl on a piece that I spent hours getting the sanding and finish perfectly. I thought it kind of ruined it for me. It opens up a lot of creativity. You can personalize items, put people's names, dates, what the occasion. You can mark very tiny stuff. I know Dave Drickhammer has marked a few toothpicks, so that and it's still legible even at that very small size. You can mark on dark woods and then add a filler. I'm gonna show that later on. You can mark pens, bottle stoppers. So these are some bottle stoppers that that Tom was nice enough to provide as an example. So put the little grape symbol on there. There we go. Here's one that's been marked on a dark wood and filled in. Okay. This tiny little box, you know, if you were to try to sign your name, put the type of wood, that kind of thing, there's really no place to put it. And so I'm able to put my logo, my name, the type of wood, and the date, all in that little maybe 3/4 inch circle there. So it's very nice for doing tiny stuff. Here's some a bigger on filler on dark wood, so it shows up quite nicely. I'm going to show one of these later, but this is just a cheap plastic test tube that I just put graduation 2020 on there as an example, but I filled that in with chalk paint to color it and accentuate it. This hollow form got a little deeper than I wanted it to be, so I poured it full of resin, so that's why we have that resin plug at the bottom, and I was able to I gotta get the light just right on that. So the marking itself didn't show up, but when I added white chalk paint to it, it comes out quite nicely. These are some Turn for Troops pens I'll be turning in tonight, so you can put all kinds of, that's got the eagle and then a patriotic scheme on it. So this is just a very plain ash pen, but by adding the laser marking, it really dresses it up. This is one that I put a design on it and filled it in with some metallic looking filler. And this is one I can't do on my laser, but I do them at work. It's a 38 special cartridge that's been marked. It says thank you for your service. It's a little hard to see, but you get the idea. So that's a variety of things that you can do. Now this one is just a little sample one that I picked out. It's a T-Rex or something like that. So you can do fairly delicate pictures too. It gets trickier, and you'll notice in this one where the grain is darker, it tends to burn deeper. That's one of the challenges with this. So the grain can mess with you a bit. All right, so why would you not buy a laser? It requires some computer skills like downloading the software and installing drivers and getting it hooked up. Usually not too bad. Creates fumes, some smoke, smell, and if you're burning plastic, those fumes could be toxic. It requires some careful experimentation. You never know for sure with the finish, the type of wood, that type of thing, what burn rate and numbers you need. So if you were to look into it, it would blind you. So that you have to be careful about that. The laser I use is Chinese, and it by putting the software on there, it could expose your computer to some outside threats. And what faster way to screw up a project than with a computer? So need to be on the next one. So what is laser? Laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So you have a medium that gets excited like any light bulb, but they put it between a couple mirrors and it bounces back and forth in there, and it produces a fixed wavelength that can be focused to a narrow beam. Normal light you see is a mixture of all different spectrums, even the purest, but a laser is a very specific waveform, and it can be focused very sharply. So the two important ratings for a laser are the power in milliwatts or watts, and the wavelength is in nanometers. Okay. So what's happening when you shine the laser on wood? You're raising the surface temperature of the wood to about 500 degrees, and that creates charring, just like if you were to put it in your fireplace or hold a lighter to it. This requires a few things to happen. The light has to be absorbed, so it can't just bounce off. You're not going to heat up a mirror with a laser very well. It has to be concentrated, so it has to be focused in a very small spot, and it requires a little bit of time for it to warm up, on the order of milliseconds. So if the surface is too shiny, the light is likely to bounce off and it won't heat up. If it's not focused, then you're not concentrating the energy on one spot. And if the wavelength is wrong for the material, it's likely to not work. This laser we have at work is about 1,000 nanometers, and it works great on metal. It doesn't work at all on wood. Okay, so be careful what you buy. On plastic, all of the previous things I said applies, but it's more melting and vaporizing the surface and roughening it up rather than charring it. So let's see. Yep. What materials that can be marked? Most natural materials, wood, leather, paper, plastic, don't require much power. They don't conduct the heat away. They readily absorb the laser light, so it doesn't take much power. Steel and stainless steel can be marked with the 20-watt VG. I don't have one of those, but I've seen it done. Materials that conduct heat away quickly are not going to be easy to laser mark, because it's just going to be, you're not going to get enough power in one spot to mark the material. But it'd probably work if you put something over it and filled it like I did on this piece. Okay, so in general, there's two types of laser marker. There's the enclosed cabinet style. That might add some added safety because it's got some shielding around it. But you're really limited on the size of object that you can do. What I'm going to show you tonight is what I call the gantry arm style. And the laser moves around on an arm. And I selected that because you can do bowls, pens, anything that you can get underneath it, really. So I think it'll do at least a 12-inch. I don't know if it'll do bigger than that. So we're gonna. So the type of lasers that I have experience with are from Niji. This particular gantry style is available in 3,500 milliwatt, 7 watt, and 20 watt versions. It's 105 nanometers wavelength. There's a new version out. This older version will do about 6 inches square, and the new version, they've upped the size a bit, and it'll do almost 7 inches square. How do you create the image? So you can copy a picture from the internet and import it. You can make your own using a drawing program or a CAD program. I use Inkscape. It's free. It's very powerful. It's quite difficult to learn, in my opinion. They also supply you with a lot of built-in images and what are called NC files, which stands for numerical control. With any of the images that you pull in, you can add your own text at different fonts, angles, stuff like that directly in the software. So what I did was I designed a logo, put my name on it, and then I add the date and the type of wood and things like that after I bring it in. Okay. This Niji Master series can operate in 2 modes. There's actually 2 microprocessors on there. There's a standard mode that just breaks the picture into dots, scans back and forth like the old dot matrix printers, and either prints a dot or doesn't print a dot. The dots are about 3/1000ths of an inch apart, so pretty fine. Then there's the NC mode that operates more like a CNC machine, and it actually goes around and draws the lines as if you were drawing it by hand. So now I'm gonna move over here to the table. So I've got the software already started up. One of the things I recommend is that you build a stand for it to raise it up off the table. So this thing in general is designed for marking something fairly flat like that, or a piece of paper, but us wood turners don't generally do stuff like that. So by raising it up, you can put taller things underneath there and then just raise them up as needed. If you need any taller than this, I found that the tool tray on my workbench works well to get it even lower. So I'll clamp this thing to the workbench, put the piece in the tray, and then I can get 9 or 10 inches height underneath it. So to avoid confusion, it's important to kind of set this thing in so that it's in the same orientation as your computer screen, okay? So I know that by putting the arm towards me and the connections away from me, then this thing will mark exactly as it looks on the screen and not be turned or upside down or anything like that. Okay, so the general process is to connect the machine by USB to your computer. It's got a little power adapter, and you plug it in. When it first starts up, it'll go to its home position, which is over in this corner. One problem I had was that this cord was getting in the way, and it couldn't get to home position, and it just sat there and ground and ground and ground. So they're not foolproof. So I'm just gonna kind of go through marking this pen blank that Tom provided. It has one coat of polyurethane on it. I sanded it a little bit with 400 grit just to make sure it wasn't too shiny. I'm going to, so this is one of the standard images. So I'm going to try to put this part of this picture on the pen. So there's a whole bunch of these patterns, and what you can do is by dragging the edges, you can just pull out the part of that you want. Okay. So then I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so now it's kind of far zoomed out, but it's telling me that it's about 24 millimeters long and about 6 millimeters wide. So the width has to be less than the circumference of your pen or it's going to overlap itself. So pi d. It's surprising how big of an image you can get on a pen. These slim lines, you could probably go 24 millimeters wide, something like that. On a cigar pen or something like that, it's 1.5 inches or more. So around the circumference. So I know that 38 works out pretty well. So I'm going to hit the adjust width here, and I'm going to type in 38 millimeters. Okay. And it's going to tell me I'm blowing it up, which is usually the wrong direction, but it should be fine. Okay, so now I've adjusted it to 38 millimeters. Okay. Hit OK. And then there's these different filters that it presents you. So I usually just kind of mouse over them and decide which one looks the best. I'm going to go with that one. Okay, now you need to make sure it's in focus, and they provide you with these very stylish glasses if you want to look at it closer. So in general, what you're trying to do is get that little dot to be as close to a pinpoint as you can, and when it's out of focus, it's generally a line. Okay. Then the next, you can if you decide you did something you didn't like, you can clear it, reload it, you can rotate it, right? You can flip it around, reverse it. You know, that would be not a good idea. It'd be all black, but anyway. So I know that the way I got this set up, that image is going to be this way because I positioned the thing accordingly. Okay, so if I wanted to add text, okay, I could type something. I can play with the font, change the size of it. There's really no way of knowing what it'll look like. And then you hit this insert, drag it over there. I'm not going to do it, but that's. And then if you wanted it to go this way instead, you'd rotate it, and then your text would go that way. It only does 90-degree angles, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to hit OK. So I focused it, I've sized it. Now what you need to do is position it. And there's a couple of tools on here for positioning. If I was doing a bowl, I would probably use this bullseye, but with a pen, I like to go into this box mode. Okay, so there it's drawing the outline. And clearly I'm in the wrong spot. So you can set how much it moves, kind of coarse and fine. So I'm going to get it roughly centered on the pen blank. Okay, and then when I get close, I'll go to a finer setting, and I'm just going by how far the light goes to the end. Okay, so that looks pretty well centered. Okay, now I'm going to set the percent power, and I know from marking pens that 50% and 15 or 16 milliseconds is a pretty good number. And then I'm going to hit go, and the fun should begin. So I don't know how well that's coming through, but yeah. It's marking. You'll see it here in a bit. While that's going, I'm going to give you a few tips. So Jerry, if you could go back to like slide 13. Let's keep down, I believe. There. Yep. Okay. You can mark text along the length without using a jig because it's not going to go that far off the center. If you want to go further around the part, you need to have a jig that actually rotates the part. A thin coat of sealer helps because there's going to be a little bit of char on the surface, and if you go to wipe that off and your wood is unsealed, then that char is going to smear onto the bare wood, and you don't want that. So one thin coat of sealer usually helps. So that little barn I'm showing illustrates a problem that you can have, and it depends on how frictionless your pen jig is. But when it starts out, it always goes to the extreme and then starts coming back. And if there's any friction in your jig, then it'll sit there in one spot for a while. So it'll just mark over itself and it'll mess up your image. So one trick I found is that if you just put like a period off to the side, outside of the image, then it'll go to that period, mark that little dot, and then it'll come back, and it's always going one direction, so it doesn't truncate the image. So you can see the progress on the screen. The red part is done, and the black part is yet to be done, and it's gone about 50% of the way. Okay, Jerry, if you could show the pen marking jig slide. Next. Okay, so you can buy jigs for this laser. I think they're $50 to $75 depending on the option, so far from free. I made my own. I made the carriage part out of hard maple and just kind of fit it so it slid on that lower plate on the carriage. I bought a letter D drill blank, okay, which is 0.246 inches. That's the size of a pen mandrel. So if you could put bushings on there just like any other pen mandrel. You could probably use a pen mandrel. The first one, I didn't put ball bearings on, and it caused some problems with friction. So this one has ball bearings on either end. You can't really see them, but there's a ball bearing under there and under there, so that it needs to rotate pretty freely. So what these little motors are stepper motors, and they don't have a lot of torque. So if there was much resistance, they're going to get stalled. So it needs to be fairly frictionless. Then I used a couple of set screw collars. This one is a split collar so that it doesn't mar up or make dents and scratches in the mandrel. Then I used a little spring, right? So that collar is pushing the pen blank against this collar, and it doesn't need to be strong because there's no forces keeping the pen from rotating. Okay. Underneath the rubber band, you need a little bushing that's roughly the size of your pen. Okay. So what's happening is that this thing thinks it's moving, and it is, but the pen moves along with it, and because of the rubber band and the bushing, it rolls the right amount. Okay. So that one's done. Yeah, I would say that the trickiest part of making the jig is to get that rod fairly centered underneath the laser, right? You don't want it off to the side. I'm just gonna pull this whole thing off. And when it's not running, it won't burn you. That little light is just for targeting. Okay. So take this off here and get a better look at the jig. So this is the one I marked for practice at home, and this is the one we just marked. Pretty fine detail. And I'll try to hold that still. Yeah. Of course, once I've taken this off, there's no getting it back exactly in the right spot. So make sure you get it all the first stuff. Any questions out there? And
You're muted.
they're all muted. Okay. All right, so I'll just stay here. The next thing I'm going to talk about is bowl marking. Okay.
How much does that thing cost?
The laser?
Yes.
Oh, the laser itself is around 200.
Okay.
So this is called a laboratory jack stand, and it's very handy for laser marking. I think they're around $20. You could certainly make your own, but and then I made this centering template on my lathe. It's just a piece of plexiglass with a bullseye, concentric circles, and they're colored so you can kind of keep track of where you're at. Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to mark this mahogany bowl that I did quite a while ago. I guess I'm gonna see if I can leave that there. So now it needs to come off. Get this rubber band out of the way. So general, I set that on there, and I try to get it roughly even with the top of this stand, because that's kind of where the laser's normally meant to mark. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be level. If it's too far out of level, the laser is going to go out of focus when you get off to the side. And the next step I like to do is I'm just going to pull in my logo here. So this thing's designed to be 3 inches, 75 millimeters. That's about as big as I ever want to go, and then you can shrink it from there down to whatever. Okay. So I'm going to pull that in. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to just eyeball about how many millimeters would be good for this one. And I'm going to go with 60. Okay. So now it's saying it's going to be 60 by 60. I'm gonna tweak this a little bit so that it's on a diagonal. Okay. If the grain was, I don't know if I'm gonna do this again. In general, yeah, it's not gonna, this particular one's not gonna fit under there. So, but in general, I would try to line your text up with your grain, but doesn't really matter. Okay, so I've adjusted the width. So I'm going to pick the filter that looks best to me. I think that one looks pretty good. Okay, so here's where you can add text. And I'm going to actually put 2019, because I'm not exactly sure when I made this thing, but and let's see. I think I can get by with a little bigger font. Okay, now here's where you're going to want to zoom in a bit. So it puts white behind your text. So if I put it there, it's going to take out that line. Okay, guys. Yeah. Okay. So I could go a little bit bigger. But I'm going to leave it there. And then I can rotate it. Whoops, went too far. I'm going to put, you guys check my spelling. Mahogany. How do you spell mahogany wrong?
H-A-N-Y.
That's it.
Oh.
Mahogany. I have misspelled things in laser, okay? So I may be a redneck. Can you, all right, we'll leave the type. What is it? M?
Sure.
O-G-A-N-Y. O-G-A-N-Y.
There you go. Look good? I literally have misspelled my name, so be careful. All right, so I'm going to put that there. And then, because people ask, I often put the type of finish. Okay, and I'm going to rotate it back. So I put the type of wood, the type of finish, the year, ready to go. My logo's got a little bit of a mistake here. I actually, pixel by pixel, tweaked this off of something I found. Okay. Oh, okay, so this is the point where I'll I like to focus it, because when you focus, when you turn that little knob, it messes with the center. So I don't know. So I see a little bit of a line that's getting wider. Okay, so close to a pinpoint right there. Okay, and it's a cheap machine, so it moves around on you a little bit. Okay, then what I'll do is I usually try to get that dot on the bottom. I'll take this circle, I'll take this centering jig, and when this is especially important when you've got a subtle transition between the bottom and the side, it's hard to find the center. So I put those blue pieces of tape, and I find the best fitting circle. Let's see here. All right, inside that red line. I need to redo this jig a little bit. All right, so because the center of the, it won't be so obvious. The closer you are to the edge, and the more important this is, otherwise your logo is going to be off center. How's that look, Ron?
It looks good.
Okay, so now I'll okay, so I'm going to go 1.5 millimeters, and this is where it's important to have it oriented, otherwise you're like, which way do I need to go? So what I try to do is get that, I've got a little indent there, and I'll try to get that dot in that indent. I'm having trouble seeing it.
You're very close.
Which way do I need to go? I find these glasses, you can't see anything. Which way? That way?
I see you there.
Yeah? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to quit out of the bullseye mode, and I'm going to take this away carefully. You don't want to move it after that. And I can double check it with this. So if I was going off the edge, I'd be able to look, kind of like when you're hollowing, how far that dot was moving off center. Okay, so it's really, well, it looks to me like I need to go that way because I'm further away. I must not have been centered. It's too much. I wish you could stop it, and I think you can, but I can't remember exactly how to do that. So what I'm trying to gauge is how far is that line away from my tape. So I'm going to try to get it. Okay, definitely need to go that way. Normally the centering jig works when you're...
I think you can stop it by clicking that same icon that you started it with.
This guy? Oh, I knew how to stop it. Okay, so now, because I'm burning through tape and I want it to be pretty heavy, I'm going to go with 75% power. And this is just something you got to experiment with. And I'm going to go with maybe 28 milliseconds. Okay. So I'm going to hit go. Now this takes quite a while. Okay, because it's just not, there's a slow mode and a fast mode. This is the fast mode. The slow mode is really slow. So I'm just going to hit go, and we'll go back to our PowerPoint here pretty quick. So I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of smoke coming off coming up into the, yeah, it's pretty hard to tell.
Can't tell that, you smell it.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some stuff you can do with reflective surfaces.
Are you running through the tape because of the reflection?
Oh, I got that. That's coming up.
Oh, okay.
No, that's not the reason.
Okay.
So somewhere online, they recommended you get this liquid chalk marker, and it comes in wonderful colors like roasted eggplant. That's my favorite. So there's the color selections. I've only used a couple. On that resin plug, I used white. Okay, but you can use whatever you want. Usually you want a contrast. This stuff's water-based. It comes off really easy, and it sticks in the grain.
Remember that slide?
Yes. Dry erase markers work, but I find that they're much harder to get off, and I've had it react with the plastic too because there's some solvents in there. So, but and the main reason I'm putting it on there is to mark on something that would be clear or very shiny, right? Because it makes a dull chalk-like surface. And I found that after you're done, you can go back over it, and the color will stick in the marking. So when you're marking something dark, like really dark walnut or something, black is not going to show up all that well. Okay, so that's where this part comes in. So the painter's tape is to keep the filler that I'm going to put on there out of the grain of the wood, at least somewhat. I haven't perfected this process yet. So I've got a stick. You can use rub and buff or lacquer stick, anything that will stick on that. So the laser mark surface is quite a bit rougher than the finish, so it just naturally wants to stick there more than the rest. So when you're done marking and you put the filler on, then you peel off the tape. Unfortunately, anything that's a full circle, the tape doesn't come off because it's been burned through, and then you have to try to pick that off. Yeah. All right, so now I have some pictures to show while we're waiting. I'd say it's less than a quarter done. So these were provided by Dave Drickhammer. He's the one that inspired me to get a laser. So that's some of the stuff he's done. He's done a wood coat hanger, the mallet for the club, pens. He's got his own logo that he's designed there. Any comments, Dave? You can see that this thing's shaking the table. That's why you need that thing clamped down, otherwise bad things can happen. The next slide is a pen I made for my son's 21st birthday. So I put his name on there, Bible verse, the date, his birthday actually. So it's a nice way to personalize items for gifts. Yes, sometimes I do flat work. don't tell anybody, but this is a nightstand I made for I made two of them, my daughter, and then on the bottom of the drawer, I put a nice little note. So, yeah, you can design I would say about the biggest font you can do is maybe a 1/2 inch, and I don't even know if it's that big. So, yeah, so I don't know, that marking's probably, it's fairly large, but it's in an unseen part, so. Yeah, so questions? Guess we'll,
With the slide.
I have one.
sure.
Now that you're burning through the tape,
Mhm.
if you were not sure on how deep it went into the wood, could you just start over and burn
Yeah.
it again?
If it hasn't moved, spider crawling up. I'm gonna let him be. If it hasn't moved, it will draw right over it itself, and you could reburn it if you wanted to. But once it's moved, you'll never
Right.
get it back in the same spot, and then it'll just be messed up. But if you, for instance, forgot the date, well, you could probably come back and add text. You'd have to look at it manually where it is on the piece, carefully center it, and you could add something like that. Okay. So that's most of what I wanted to show. Unfortunately, I don't have enough slides to fill the time. Yeah. Probably should have done the pen too first.
That's really good questions. That's good questions.
Any questions while we're waiting for the slow-mo?
Yeah, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I heard the price mentioned $200. Are you saying this whole setup, this arm and everything is $200, or was that just for the laser itself?
The laser itself is about $200, give or take. The little stand was maybe 20 or 25, something like that. I don't know what the total on the pen jig was, maybe $30. Unfortunately, most of that was shipping.
The whole black, what I see that is black with the whatever, that's $300?
Yeah, this marker here with the cable, the power supply is about $200.
And is that available through Woodcraft or where?
No, I don't believe Woodcraft sells it. You can find them on Amazon, nmclasers.com, although she's often out of stock. I don't know why. That's who I bought it from. She provides replacement parts and technical help. I'd recommend her. She's very helpful, but often when I go look at her site, she's out of stock on stuff. So it's hit or miss. But yeah, Niji Master is what you want to search for.
So will you post this all to your website so you know where to buy and recommendations?
If NMC Lasers is a good one, if she has them in stock. Okay. But I'm pretty sure Amazon, a lot of the online retailers sell.
One of the things about buying it from NMC Lasers from Nancy is that she's got the best customer service there is. She's helped several people, myself, Tony, get lasers going that we didn't even buy from her.
Yeah, she is very helpful.
Yeah, if you can get a laser from her, she's the place to get it from. Do not go on any of these sites that sell them out of China, because their failure rate is real high, and you won't get any satisfaction out of them.
I won't knock on wood because it might mess me up, but I've had very good luck with this one since I got through the cable issue.
Hey, Kurt.
I'm gonna check real fast and see if she has them in stock.
Okay. I looked the other day, Dave, and I'm not sure if she did or not. I thought she didn't. But it might, if you're not in a huge hurry, it might be just worth waiting, and you can probably have them email you when they get them in stock. But yes, Nancy is very helpful and offers replacement parts also. I wish this wasn't taking so long, but it is what it is.
Hey, Kurt, I have a question.
Mhm.
I know you mentioned it, but I blanked out. But why aren't you burning directly on the bowl? Why do you have that surface on there?
Okay, so what I plan, what I plan to do is use a stick like this, and you could use the chalk paint too, but this has more of a metallic color. And I'll take that, where's that little dinosaur? Yeah, I don't mind messing with that. So on a dark wood, I'll go over this, and wherever it's been roughened and by the laser, it'll stick more. Okay. Now I haven't prepped this piece, so it's going to be kind of a mess. So we're going to see what happens. But so the blue tape is intended to keep the filler out of the grain of the wood. Okay, because this stuff will get in every little pore, as it's doing here. So by using the tape, it keeps most of this filler. It'll only, when you peel off the tape, most of this filler will come with it, and then mostly what's left is just the filler in the
Okay.
in the wood, in the mark.
Thank you. I got it. I missed that part.
So can you hand me that base right there? The big one. Yeah. So what I did here was I marked it, and then I went over it with the chalk paint. And now this is resin, so I didn't have to worry about it sticking in the pores. But by going over it with the chalk paint and then carefully wiping it off, the chalk paint stays in the.
I've been a Milwaukee woodturner, so. Yeah, I think.
So that's where I was going with this. Unfortunately, it's just taking a while. So
I just checked, and she is out of the 3500s and the 7 watt,
okay.
but she gets them in pretty frequently, and you can get hold of her and get on a waiting list, and she'll let you know when they're in.
Okay.
What wattage do you recommend to get between the 3500 to 7 watts and the 20?
So if you mainly want to do wood, the 3500 is cheaper. I don't know, Dave, do you think you can go faster with the 20 watt? It's maybe like $75 more for the 20 watt.
Okay.
Well, the 20 watt is kind of overrated. I've got one. It's not real good for engraving, but it's good for cutting.
Yeah.
I would say if you're going to buy a laser, probably the best one to get would be the 7 watt. In fact, I plan on buying a 7-watt light for mine and taking the 20 off unless I'm going to do cutting. But I do have a 3500 that's perfect for what you're doing right now, and pens and just about anything. The 7-watt will engrave a little deeper, but the 3500 is more precise.
Yeah, I've never used this one at max power. But I've never tried to mark metals, and the plastics I've done it's been plenty good.
I've used a 20-watt to engrave a name on a stainless steel knife blade. And I had to put a black marker on it to dull the surface. And then it took several passes at 100% at the slowest speed to get it to mark. But it does mark it.
So the only other thing I was really going to demo was the NC mode. The only difference between this and NC mode is that it goes along the lines instead of just dot by dot.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, do you know of any real advantage of NC mode other than maybe faster?
That's pretty much it. It's faster. If you're going to use it with a 20-watt for cutting, you definitely want to use the NC mode. If you do it in the mode that you're doing right now, it'll start your wood on fire.
Yeah. So if you want to cut, you need the higher wattage, and then you'd want the NC file because it would, go around cut out of shape. This is for engraving. No, I can stop. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend a 20-watt.
You wouldn't?
I would not.
Right.
I've played around with it quite a bit. I can probably cut 3 to 8 millimeter wood if it's like balsa wood. But it's pretty limited there too.
So this stuff is kind of, I don't know, like a paint pen, but it's water based. It's chalky, so it's kind of ideal. I don't know how durable it would be.
What kind of finish you put over that? Anything? I mean, it wouldn't be up.
Okay, that's a good point. So often what I'll do on pens is I'll engrave it and then I'll layer it up with CA until it's completely filled in.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it very distinct, and it's buried down in.
Mm-hmm.
And
so when you do
that I just, there's no finish over top of the laser.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thanks for your attention.
All right.
Good demo, Kurt.
Thank
you, Kurt.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yes, so if I wanted to upgrade this to a 20-watt, I could buy a 20-watt head from Nancy. You might have to change out the electronics and get a different power supply, but yes, they are somewhat upgradable.
Kurt, if you wanted to upgrade that one there, you've got the Master 1. You would need a different motherboard and power supply for the 20-watt.
Well, I might get a Master 2, but I'm really not. I really see no reason to have more power for what I do.
I think for what you do, it's what you have is just fine. You'd have to see if you can get the 20-watt and justify it, the expense.
anyhow, thank you very much, Kurt. It's going to take a bit too long for this project to finish engraving, and we have a limited time here for our demos here at Woodcraft, considering that they're actually closed right now, and so we don't want to keep them here forever. But thanks again to Kurt and to Tom for 2 great demonstrations this evening. And remember, everyone, that next month we have Trent Bosch, who is a spectacular woodturner. He's actually going to not really be turning too much, he's going to be focusing more on surface finishing of bid folding. So he has plenty of videos out there if you want to see how he colors the bowl, but he's going to sort of cruise over that and I think dive into more surface embellishment, surface techniques and surface finishing. So everyone have a good evening. Thank you very much.